The end of the 2026 Formula 1 preseason has arrived. What lies ahead from now on will be the real action, and in a couple of weeks, it will be time to take off all the masks and unleash the true potential of each and every car on the Formula 1 grid. But at least on this final day, the teams that were able to have completed their last programs, the work that was done, was done. What wasn't will have consequences when you get to the first race of the year at the Albert Park circuit. But ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the final summary of Day 6 of the Formula 1 preseason at the Bahrain circuit. I don't know what else to say about this team except that disaster is just around the corner, and that's not an exaggeration. Aston Martin finishes the preseason in the worst possible way, with practically no mileage today. Stroll had the car during the day and only did 2 installation laps in the morning, then in the afternoon completed another 4 installation laps, and that's it. With this, his preseason is officially over. And according to rumors, it seems that the reason they didn't go out on track today is because Honda and Aston Martin ran out of spare parts for the power unit and gearbox after so many problems they've reported, and that's why they only did those 6 miserable laps today. So it's undeniable that things look terrible for this team at this particular point, and there's a lot of work to do. Not just to be competitive, but to finish the first race of the year in Australia. And even though they say they already have solutions, that they've identified the problem and are already working on it, this is a never-ending story, and the only sure thing is that things don't look good at all for the team led by Lawrence Stroll. Cadillac finishes preseason testing with more issues, just what they didn't need. As has become usual, both Bottas and Checo have split the session, with the Mexican taking the wheel of the car during the morning. He began the day with aerodynamic tests, but the key point is that the Mexican handled the team's race simulation. The positive thing is that even though he couldn't finish it because of the protocol red flag that the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile set on the track, he managed to complete more than 50 laps. His pace was very consistent, although of course slow, but this was expected. In the afternoon, Bottas was in charge of driving the car, and he was following a program focused on stints until a data transmission problem forced the team to stop after only 21 laps, and they had to manually download the same data. After that, he was able to go out and complete a few more laps, and in the end, he finished the preseason with 98 laps. Between the laps set by Checo and those recorded by Valtteri Bottas in the afternoon, the best time of the day for them ended up being set by Valtteri Bottas with a time of 1:35, thus closing out his preseason. And now they're ready for the Australian Grand Prix. Sainz drove the Williams car for the whole session and handled it on the final day. And during the session, he carried out different programs, as well as being responsible for conducting another race simulation for the team, although he couldn't complete it, doing only 30 laps with 2 different sets of tires. And at least the data obtained from this half-race simulation is not positive at all in terms of performance. For that, they tried several stints throughout the day and ended up with 141 laps completed, and the best time for this team ended up being 1:34.33, which gives them the 10th best record of the day. So, despite missing the preseason in Barcelona, they end up with a lot of kilometers logged. It's understood that they'll start off slow and try to recover from the excess weight they're carrying. But despite arriving late, they've done better than some other teams, and that's a positive aspect among some of the problems they had throughout this preseason. Racing Bull wraps up the preseason with Arvid Lindblad, who was in charge of driving the car on this last day, and his session was extremely productive because he was the driver who did the most laps alone, not just today, but in the entire preseason. There were 165 laps distributed across different programs. He dedicated the morning to driving stint programs, and in the afternoon he did his race simulation, running average lap times in the high 1-41s during the first 2 stints, generally confirming that the feeling that they belong to the midfield group is correct. At the end, they finished the day with a time of 1:34 and say goodbye to the preseason in a very positive way, with a lot of data and a huge amount of information gathered. Audi's preseason performance is very encouraging for a team that was predicted to have a poor start to 2026. Audi wraps up its first preseason with Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto after another productive high-mileage session. Hülkenberg drove the car in the morning, completing short stints and some long runs to test the pace, which was just a preview of what drew attention later. The race simulation was carried out in the afternoon by Gabriel Bortoleto, a stint using medium and hard tires, quite surprising. Competitive average lap times in the high 140s and a final stint pushing to finish with an average in the high 137s. In fact, according to the data, it was the best simulation among the midfield teams that carried out these programs today. So overall, this was the most significant thing he did today. Audi finishing with a total of 135 laps completed, and Bortoleto setting the fastest time of the day with a 1:33.755 ends the preseason with very good feelings and showing that Audi arrived very The American ends the preseason with another strong lap count in another high mileage session, and overall they finished the preseason on a high note as one of the teams with the most kilometers completed. In the morning, Esteban Ocon drove the car for 82 laps and as a fun anecdote even used the intermediate tire, which amused everyone in the garage. But he carried out different stint programs, testing various setups, and in the afternoon it was Berman who performed the team's race simulation. A stable simulation with a pace very similar to what Racing Bulls did, but surprisingly behind the one set by Audi, although of course we don't know the engine modes or fuel loads they were using. The Briton, at the end of the day, also tested the speed and says goodbye to the preseason, setting a time of 1:33, and Haas finishes with 169 laps today, being the team with the most laps completed on this day in an extremely productive preseason. This time, Gasly was in charge of driving the Alpine throughout today's session, and once again they've had a trouble-free day with many kilometers completed by the French driver. In the morning, they tested many setups, completing up to 57 laps in several stints, and in the afternoon, they followed a very similar program. They worked with different tires and in the end, even did qualifying simulations, setting the team's best time with a 1:33.421, which placed him 5th on the timesheet today. So finally, it confirms the good feelings that they have taken a step forward and finished this last day with 118 laps, waiting to see what else we can expect when Formula 1 starts at the Australian circuit. This time, Mercedes didn't finish at the top of the timesheet and once again experienced problems. Antonelli carried out the work in the last morning session, starting with aerodynamic tests and then several long runs testing different setups. However, during one test, he caused the day's only red flag. He was sidelined by a pressure loss issue that forced Mercedes to change the power unit, leaving Antonelli with a total of 49 laps completed. In the afternoon, Russell took over the car once it was repaired, but it's noteworthy that they didn't attempt a race simulation and instead focused their program on long driving stints, testing different things, including setups. But at the end of the day, Russell finished with 82 laps, which combined with Antonelli's 49 laps made a total of 131 laps today, and they ended the day with a time of 1:33.190. In the end, Antonelli finishes his laps and they wrap up a preseason full of ups and downs, but where Mercedes is expected to at least be fighting for the top spots again under this new technical regulation. End of preseason for Red Bull, and honestly, with their new power unit, they've been the surprise so far. They're leaving with good pace, a lot of mileage, and a very solid foundation to start the year. As expected, the morning session was given to Isaac Hayar, who, like other teams, spent the morning testing car setups and configurations, doing a lot of work with short runs, but still managed to complete 59 laps. Verstappen took over in the afternoon, and his program was very similar to that of his young teammate, with different setup tests and some long runs. In the end, he tried a speed run, setting the third fastest time of the day, doing it on medium tires with a time of 1:33.109. And between the laps of Hayar and Verstappen, they totaled 124, ending a very positive preseason as they wait to see the real pace of the car when it gets put to the test in a couple of weeks. The world champions finished the preseason with the most laps overall, though their mileage today was less than previous days. This morning, Piastri drove the car for McLaren. Piastri spent much more time testing the car's performance in his different stints, trying to squeeze out as much knowledge as possible and managing to complete 66 laps before handing over to Lando Norris in the afternoon, who started pushing hard right from the beginning of the session, also testing the speed. However, later in this session, they attempted a race simulation that they couldn't finish due to running out of time, and Norris ended up with only 47 laps, but he managed to secure the second fastest time of the day with a lap of 1:32.871 and a total of 113 laps. So McLaren wraps up a good day of testing with a lot of information, many tests, and plenty of data, which isn't bad at all for those who had been considered the losers of the preseason in Barcelona. Tifosi can smile for now because it seems that what's happening with Ferrari is real. I'm not saying they're the fastest or that they're going to be champions, but it does seem that the Ferrari is an extremely competitive car, as shown again today on the last day of preseason. All day the car was in the hands of Leclerc, who carried out different programs, testing performance and setups in the morning, and in the afternoon doing a 3-stop race simulation, starting on soft tires and doing 3 stints on mediums. A very positive simulation with pace, little degradation and consistency, which gives a good feeling about what to expect from them in 2026. And if that wasn't enough, they went for speed with several qualifying simulations and ended up as the fastest team of preseason with a time of 1:31.992, being the only team to go below that mark. And yes, I know the jokes about being preseason champions and everything that's always said about Ferrari, but this time I can't deny that the Italian team looks good. They have potential, and at least for now, I do believe they have performance. So it seems that the Tifosi really have something to be excited about, and that's a positive thing for a team that has been looking for a chance at success for such a long time. They finished today with 32 laps completed, and now it's about confirming they can perform similarly at the Australian Grand Prix in a couple of weeks. But ladies and gentlemen, with this, we wrap up the last summary of the 2026 Formula 1 preseason. In these segments, I usually end by saying goodbye and sharing my prediction for the first Australian Grand Prix grid. But this time I'm going to make a separate video talking about that, so for now I'll say goodbye by first thanking you for keeping up with all the coverage we've done over these weeks. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you know when I'm uploading new content, and share it with your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter using the links in this video's description. See you soon for more content on the Skyline Racing channel. Thank you for tuning in and see you later.